I've been collecting material for the past 18 months. Now, some of the pieces were thought to have been lost. Other works have barely been seen in public. This is the first time that so much of this has been brought under one roof.
Joshua Johnston was one of the earliest known Black American artists. The facts of his life are not clear. 3 different Baltimore families claimed him as their slave. His name is listed in the Baltimore Directory. He could have been a slave or a free colored man. That he was a black man seems certain. For to have incorrectly listed a white man as black would have been a libelous matter. In any case, for the present, Joshua Johnston is one of the first Black American painters, and certainly the most productive of his time. Robert S. Duncanson was born in upstate New York in 1817. His mother was Afro-American, his father Scotch-Canadian. Duncanson grew up in the Cincinnati of the 1840s. His art career started with a self-study course. His employer, a black man, encouraged him to continue his study. Support also came from the community. An anti-slavery group sponsored his European studies. Duncanson never became an exile. His feeling toward his country is expressed in his gift to Charles Sumner. Accept this as an expression of gratitude from my people for your fight on our behalf. Robert S. Duncanson died on December 21st, 1872, in Detroit, in a hospital for the insane. Edward Mitchell Bannister was born on November 28, 1828. His mother was a native of New Brunswick, his father a West Indian. As a child, Bannister spent his playtime sketching his friends. On his first job, he spent his off hours teaching himself. Working in a Boston studio, he made contact with an art teacher. It is said that a story in a New York paper denying that blacks could produce art challenged Bannister. He vowed to prove the contrary without benefit of patronage, study abroad, or racial themes. Bannister's feeling for his people expressed itself in other ways. During the Civil War, he and his wife collected funds for Union soldiers. Mrs. Bannister organized a home for the elderly. Today, that home is open for all senior citizens. Bannister was one of the organizers of the Providence Art Club, the catalyzing body of the Rhode Island School of Design. When Edmonia Lewis completed Forever Free, she wrote, "I will take nothing for my labor. William Lloyd Garrison has given his whole life for my father's people, and I think I should give him a few months' work." Edmonia Lewis was born in Albany, New York in 1845. Her mother was Indian, her father black. She was orphaned at an early age. With the help of friends, she entered college. At Oberlin, an innocent prank led to serious trouble. Edmonia was accused of poisoning her roommates. Tried and acquitted of the charge, she made her way east. Edmonia began her art career in Boston. A sculptor friend loaned her some tools. Another friend helped her rent a studio. Friends bought her works. Sales of the busts of Civil War heroes made it possible for her to study in Europe. At the peak of her career, Edmonia Lewis had 2 commissions of $50,000 each. She died in obscurity around the turn of the century. In 1897, Henry Osawa Tanner won a coveted Paris Salon Prize. Tanner was born free in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on June 21st, 1859. His parents were free blacks. His father was a bishop in the African Methodist Zion Church. Tanner's formal training was under Thomas Eakins, who became his friend. From art school, Tanner went south, thinking he could combine business and art. The income from his enterprise was so small that he wrote in 1890, "My diet consisted of cornmeal mixed with salt and water in as many ways as I could think of." His art of this period attracted the attention of Bishop and Mrs. Joseph Hartzell. They bought his paintings as he was trying to raise funds to study in Europe. Tanner lived in Europe for 46 years. He died May 26, 1937.
I saw pictures of Henry Ossawa Tanner, Christ on the rooftop. Gave a great stimulus to my interest in art. I got me a fellowship at Rice's studio, where I worked for 2 years. Rice was a German artist that had come to America. When I went there, he took note of the sort of thing that I was doing, but insisted that I introduce something of this African thing in it. I simplified the form, the body, so that the lines were rigid and produced a primitive effect. As soon as I got the idea, it took fire like that. Everyone was interested in it. It was just the sort of thing that they were looking for, and I really got to be the fair-haired boy. But I had a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, 1922. I was one of the top students in the art class. And one of the funny things, I thought that all you had to do was to have this, go through this college thing and and do this painting, and you'd go out and get a studio and start the painting, you see. And of course, there's no such thing happened.
I'm doing the bust of Duke Ellington for the Performing Arts Center out in Milwaukee. Would you like to see what I've started? From 5 years old on, I have been a sculptor. And my family's great love. They said, we don't know where we got her from, but we love her, and she plays in the dirt, and we know where she is. We had a riverbed there, and there was gray clay, and my brothers used to dig it out, and I saw that I could make things. But these two uncles who were missionaries out in Africa, and their trunks had come home to us after they died, and they were filled with African sculptures. But my father said to me one day, they're yours, and they're beautiful. Between 12 and 13 years old, I had copied everything in those trunks. My mother was so bent on my having a profession, I became a nurse. I quit that job and came to New York so that I could go to art school. And of course, when I went away to Columbia, to Sarah Lawrence, to Europe, I became very much more academic, very much more feeling of perfection, keeping sculpture alive. My whole pursuit of excellence has been to improve each piece of sculpture.
When I was a little boy, they had a prize in the local theater in Pittsburgh for the best poster advertising the big parade. And I went to the library and I researched. My grandmother looked at it and she said, you know, this will never win a prize. You've got too much in it. Just have Uncle Sam picking up a wounded doughboy and saying forward. And I won the first prize. Well, everything that's happened to you goes in some way to your art, whether consciously or unconsciously. I began to sell my cartoons to some of the humor magazines of the time. And then I went to study after I finished college with the late George Groats, and became increasingly more interested in painting. In my work, but what I would want to come through is to do the best justice I can to the visual world around me, to my memory, and to a continuity of myth and ritual.
I came to Washington in the last day of August 1907 from Columbus, Georgia. When we got to Alexandria, it was very exciting. The train stopped and I could see the Washington Monument and the beautiful sailboats on the Potomac. It was really, looked like I was going into paradise. My mother was very much interested in color. She could take dresses and blend the colors and make most unusual type of dresses. They were really poems. I remember where I lived on Rose Hill in Columbus, Georgia. There were little streams of water that trickled down the hill. I would go and get little cans of the clay and take it to my home and make little dishes or something out of it. I was very happy when I entered that art room. I stuck with it. I am using color in different types of compositions.
As a kid in Alabama, I played with red clay. I suppose I've always been interested in sculpture. As a kid, I had various jobs, the painting, sign painting on grocery stores. It was very interesting because I had one store and then I ended up with 20 stores and I wasn't able to handle them all, so I had to buy a bicycle and my business got very good. We have a wonderful roof garden, and to see plants each morning budding and growing is really wonderful. We have at least 500 school children visiting us for Christmas. They come through, they look at sculpture, they ask questions about sculpture. I worked for the Board of Education for about 20 years, and what I did for them there was photography, brochures, and also we would be interested in young people in their careers. Whatever they are interested in, I try to get them to stay with it. I'll continue to do sculpture regardless. It's a compulsion. I must.
I was born in Boston, that city of culture. We live in the downtown section of Boston. My father went to evening school, to Suffolk Law School, and in his late 40s, he received his degree. My mother was my greatest inspiration. She loved flowers, and I can remember also her great interest to design hats. I was very, very happy, of course, painting in Paris. Émile Bernard, the father of French symbolism, was a great inspiration to me. I traveled extensively to 14 countries in Africa. Of course, we are now very much interested in black art. I was never as black as I am today. I hope that the day will come when we will be considered as artists, thinking more in terms of a broad humanity. That is my one wish.
I was raised in the Harlem community. My parents moved from Atlantic City to Philadelphia, Eastern Pennsylvania. I just started playing with color. I wasn't thinking of being an artist. I don't think I really knew what a professional artist was at the time. I went into the Harlem Arts Center and received guidance, received encouragement. And, you know, in retrospect, I realized how important that was. For the past few years, I've been working on builders' themes, and I oftentimes use the symbols of tools, and I like to include children passing on a tool as a constructive symbol. Well, I think tools are very beautiful things. They're very beautiful instruments. They're functional, they're artistic, aesthetic, they're beautifully to hold. And I like anatomical drawings. I like structure. I think tools are related to that. I use them in my paintings, and I just like to look at them. I don't like to interpret paintings, really, because I think they have to be understood according to the spectator's own experience.
This is my second attempt at doing a horse. The first one was the horse for General Dessalines, the equestrian statue of General Dessalines in Haiti. And I enjoyed it very much, but I did this Arabian horse, the second one, because I like the shortness of the spine and the smallness of the head, and it's very spirited. I did this in 1940, and it happened that I was invited for the first time to show something in the Metropolitan Museum. I made 2 copies of it, and one went to the Met and one to the Chicago Art Institute Museum.
Books are some of the most precious things in my life. I guess ever since I was 14, when I came across and discovered some of the most beautiful art books. An Englishman named Yellowby had taken my great-grandmother as his slave wife and had fathered 10 kids by her. I was born in Chicago. We lived mostly on the south side. We had the only frame house in the block. And every winter the pipes used to freeze. So we never had any water. We always had to borrow water from our neighbors. My stepfather was an ordinary worker. My mother, she was a domestic worker. Practically all her life since I guess she started when she was about 8 years old. One day when I was about 14, I saw an announcement about a meeting of a group called the Art Crafts Guild. Discovery that a club that was composed of older blacks interested in art was just excited me, man. I just about flipped. There's a direct relationship, a correlation between the content of what I do and this history, this personal history.